Hey, hello there, my name's TheYamiks, and I'm your friendly dead horse beating Latvian. Say, do you like video games?
Right, you like video games, right? A little bit of Destiny, a little bit of PlanetSide 2, a little bit of Elite Dangerous, or maybe even those Call of Duty reboots just recently released, right? Or maybe, hell, even Dark Tide or Helldivers. Well, guess what? Every single game I mentioned, and many other ones, will get killed and die. No, I'm not talking about the updates stop coming or content stops coming because developers are moving away. Well, okay, that will happen to some games, and most games in fact, except for maybe EVE Online or World of Warcraft, but no, that won't kill the game. No, what I mean is one day the game you play will not be playable ever again. That kind of death. See, that's the end result of about 94% of these games that require always online, or, well, better known as live service games, or games as a service. See, once the developer stops giving a fuck, or, well, it becomes unprofitable, the game itself goes straight into the garbage, and no one is ever able to play it ever again. With these games, even if you have the game files on your PC, without the online servers validating or hosting something, the game is dead. It's bricked. Yeetus fetus deletus, or expressway into the forever box. However, Ross Scott and the good people behind Stop Killing Games project have done more than pretty much any of us have done in the name of game preservation and for the rights of gamers/customers. And us here in the diverse and enriched Europe can perhaps take a moment to stop stabbing each other for a second and do something productive. We could save games and maybe set kind of a properly defined standards. Right, so today's topic will pertain more to European side of things. However, the rest of the world will get its chance to voice its support for Stop Killing Games and to demolish this whole idea of killing games as an art form almost. So then, what do we got? Alright, so a little bit of context here. Ross Scott is a fellow creator here on YouTube. He's more known for the Freeman's Mind from back in the day with Machinima and a few other things, but today he's more known for advocacy for game preservation and, well, generally speaking, being able to play the games that you paid for, you know, years down the line without some company meddling in between. But that's a whole different topic. Right, today the Citizens Initiative in Europe, or European Citizens Initiative, has been, well, started. It's begun, basically. Yeah, European citizens can sign a petition, and yes, I know, it's a gamer petition, but this one will, well, this one will work if we have enough signatures, to a certain degree. So, let's elaborate. Or rather, let's take a quick look what the hell is even going on, shall we? Alright, so then Ross and his helpers from Stop Killing Games has been taking strides and steps towards essentially provoking, well, not really provoking, but essentially motivating politicians in all sorts of places around the world to essentially do something about the destruction of video games. And one of those initiatives is the European Citizens Initiative. So let's take a quick look on basically the objectives of it. This initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to customers in European Union or related features and assets sold for video games they operate to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, initiative seeks to prevent remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the video game once they discontinue it while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. So, those that don't read that mumbo-jumbo nonsense, essentially, if you think of Helldivers, Elite Dangerous, whatever, once the servers go down, once the developer stops hosting the server. Once the server is inaccessible, dead, broken, exploded, whatever. Once that happens, once the developer decides, okay, it's not worth for us to continue supporting the game or developing for it or maintaining it, we have to release some kind of a way or provide a way that the game would continue functioning, essentially. And that's all we're asking for. Because right now, what happens when the servers go down? Well, you have the game client, but guess what? Without the server, well, there's no game. You can't access the server, you can't play the game, even though you have all the files, or at least partially files, on your PC. Alright, so like me, you probably barely understand what the hell is going on within the European Parliament. So what the hell is this European Citizens Initiative? Well, it's a petition, right? But unlike a typical gamer petition, this one is mandated to be given an answer. Essentially, once we have enough signatures, politicians are, they are mandated, it's mandatory for them to give us an answer for our inquiry, essentially. Whether or not it is resulting in a law for or against what we're asking, well, we'll see. So, but the point is, we are asking for our games to be, stop killing games, essentially. And through laws, hopefully with enough signatures, we would get an answer from the parliament. Some sort of a legislative law would be put in place so that the publishers and these developers would be at least forced to provide some kind of mean for our games to keep working once they stop supporting them. Right? That's literally all we're asking for. Hopefully that's not too hard to understand. However, now in order for us to collect those signatures, there's a big kerfuffle, blah blah blah, blah has to be done. Each country has a threshold that it has to reach before the signatures can be counted in. Yeah, hold on. Right, so you can see each country here on the wonderful little link that will be down below, as well as Ross Scott's video, so go check it out if you want more information, or more concise information. But essentially, the link for this, hopefully you complete it correctly, is gonna be down below. Go click it now, that's pretty much all you need to know, sign it, and so on and so forth. Now, carrying on. So each country will have to have some sort of a threshold that it needs to reach, appropriate to its citizenry. For example, Latvia, we have requirement of 6,000, give or take, citizens that need to sign this petition in order for our votes to count. So, come on, you fuckers! Get on with it! And every country has its own, so you can speedrun this. Come on, which country is the most interested in saving games? Let's go. Let's see who actually wants the games to be signed. Oh boy, Germany is going well. Ooh, Sweden's going real well. Wow, Finland's almost done. That's amazing. So, come on, Latvians. Let's go get on with it. Alright, so here's the thing. With these live service games, these always online games, well, most of the time you paid 70, hell, 40, maybe even $10 for them. And fact of the matter is, without the online servers, they would be brick. They would be unplayable completely. There's no offline or sort of a non-server element in the game. Essentially, for various reasons, you can understand why it could be there. However, once the developer decides it could just be shut down, or rather, usually what these companies tend to do is just simply decide, well, okay, barely anyone is playing the game, well, what's the point? Shut down the server, kill the game. But what happens at that point is, well, you paid money for a product, and suddenly that product, even though you have the code, or at least a portion of the code, it just stops working. Well, great analogy there is, movies on a disc. Literally, you buy a Blu-ray of, let's say, Lord of the Rings Extended Edition and watch it, and suddenly, because you don't have internet connection or some sort of validation from the server, all of a sudden, that information you bought on the disc is just nulled and void, even though most of it is there, if not all of it. And that's a big problem, because the thing is, These games, these live service games, they are being sold on a perpetual license. Live service games are not services. Again, Ross Scott made a wonderful 1-hour segment, a video about why these games are fraud. Again, we're not there for the litigious reasons. We just want publishers of the games to have some sort of a end-of-life plan put in place. Now, one example of what happens with games that are always online and they shut down just recently happened, in fact. So, Redfall, yeah, you remember that piece of shit? Well, it was a piece of shit, but even if it was, people paid good money for it. And, well, it required an online always sort of connection, otherwise the game wouldn't work. I tested it, I reviewed it. Oh boy, even though it's Left 4 Dead, regardless, doesn't matter what the game is or what the quality of it is. Fact of the matter is, you paid money for it. Upfront, a full price. It wasn't a subscription-based license. It was a full price, and you get to play the game. But without the server, suddenly, well, you can't play the game. So, literally, your product is broken. Intentionally so. However, well, here's the thing. Bethesda, who is publishing that game, decided to refund, at least partially, people who have bought that game. And that is a rarity. See, Redfall is a rarity where a publisher decides that, okay, we stop supporting this live service product that has that always online thing, and we don't want to or can't develop any kind of tool to make it playable offline. Okay, what do we do? Well, we could shut down the servers. But then people would complain. And guess what? Yeah, they did refund it. And that's a good thing. Point is, that's an exception. That's one of the acceptable exceptions. You get refund after the game is shut down. But as I said previously, 94% of these games don't have that luxury. And that's where the problem begins. But here's the thing. What happens with the game when the publisher is not so caring, I guess you could say? What happens to Helldivers, right? You like Helldivers, probably, statistically speaking, right? You like Elite Dangerous. Well, I like Elite Dangerous, despite my rantings and critique about it. And the thing is, what happens to that game once it doesn't have access to the servers? What happens in that day when Helldivers developers decide to make the next game and turn off the servers for the previous one? What happens then? Sure, the game just recently released, less than a year ago, but is there an end-of-life plan in place? No, as far as I could tell, no. And that's the case with pretty much every other live service game. There's no end-of-life plan. Well, Elite Dangerous might have one, but that's a different story. Most of the time, I expect the developers, once they see literally few players on the servers, to simply shut it off and nobody's gonna notice. But what happens to the history of these games? They have important art in them, even though they are kind of shit like Redfall. I'd rather prefer to have a game that is continuously playable and experienceable, you know, even as a lesson in bad game making. Still, it's, to me, holding some sort of value. But refund, fine, whatever. Point is, when these live service games shut down and the developer, publisher decides, we're not gonna release the code, we're not gonna give any kind of way to keep running the game, we're not gonna make an offline mode, we're not gonna refund either. Fuck you, thanks for money. That's the problem. And that's what we're trying to, well, advocate for. At least give us some kind of a way without extra goddamn cryptographic super knowledge hackery to run the game. Because the thing is, most of the games today are encrypted. You can't just simply crack it. It's not that simple. And honestly, come to think of it, piracy is pretty much the last bastion of game preservation, but that's a different topic. Point is, essentially, that games, well, today we might think that, oh, well, you know, Helldivers, for example, it just released, it's young, you know, it's gonna go for 5, 10 years, hell, maybe even 20 years like EVE Online, but what happens then? What happens once it doesn't become profitable or stops being profitable, right? Are you so willing to give away your money, or you won't care? Well, that's good on you. That's your money. If you want to set it ablaze, that's your prerogative. But what if I want to play it? What if literally that's your right to choose what you do with your disc, right? Alright, so I've got this old game, right? So here we go. I got an old disc. Yes, I'm that old. Anyways, so I got this, well, Russian version, but regardless, a Ford Drive, right? So there's plenty of licenses and IPs in it, but this disc is mine, right? I can put it right now in my PC, you know, and copy the files and so on and so forth. I got the key there, or the serial number, and I can play the game. When the game is being sold to you in this kind of a format, be that on Steam or in a disc, it's both the same license. It's just that with a physical license, you're given a medium. You know, you get a disc on which the data resides. But what you're being sold is, well, the disc, of course, and the packaging, what else. But more importantly, the data and the license to run this copy of the game. That's your license. That's your right. And with that license, you can do whatever you want. And this data on it, essentially the serial key and whatever. Essentially, you can choose what to do with it. You can break the enclosure, or technically, if you really wanted to, you could copy the data of this disk onto another one, and it would still be legal to run the game because you have this license, because you have the serial key and you have purchased the license as well. And that's the problem with these live service games. You do have the perpetual license, but guess what? Without the servers, you can't run it. And at that point, it is intentional bricking, intentional ruination of your product, of your license. It's well, to a certain degree, I guess, would be infringement of it. Of course, I'm not a legal person, but hopefully I expressed it well enough. It's your right, it's my right, it's all of our rights as customers, gamers. And if you want to get conceptual there, well, it's for our love of video games. So then, what the fuck are you waiting for? Go sign it, my fellow Europeans, and for the rest of the world, wait for other potential initiatives that are coming near you, Americans and Canadians and Australians. I think Australian one is going, regardless. Go check out Stop Killing Video Games. I'll link everything down below. Go do it now. Now, as for my fellow Latvians, tātad, sākam, ejam, bakstam to linku lejā, vienkārši parakstam, un cerams, ka pareizi parakstam, un vienkārši daram visu, ko mēs varam, lai saglabātu spēles, kuras mēs izbaudam, vai ne? Tā kā, davai, neesi mīkstais, neesi pīders, un kustini savu pakaļ, dari kaut ko spēļu labā, jo mums visiem paspējam tak nolāpīt to Lietuvu un Igauniju, vismaz. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of a bit different thing, and let's do something for the future of video games, for the preservation and for this art form that I personally find the most interesting of any kind of art form. Though, again, some art might not be as interesting as other, but anyways, take care for now, and go sign the petition! Boom, boom.